welcome back. So as you guys know, I have been in and out of the hospital for like the last 3 months. As such, I've been through some things that has led me to experience a great deal of anxiety when it comes to hospitals. This video will cover some of those anxieties as well as some coping mechanisms to handle them. There will be a timestamp in the description that will take you directly to the coping mechanisms part of this video. A warning beforehand, this video will talk about medical procedures and various medical things like medical objects and stuff like that. So if you have any triggers related to those, I would recommend skipping ahead just to the coping mechanisms portion of this video. So let's get right into it. So the first thing that I experienced anxiety towards in accordance to hospitals is having IVs put in and having them flushed, and in addition having fluids starting to be run through them. The reason for this is because at one point the ward nurses, not the IV nurses, tried to put in a new IV, and they tried like 4 times and they couldn't do it, and they hurt me a lot. And 2, my IVs got clogged really often, so when they would go to flush them, sometimes it would sting. If I recall correctly, at one point one of the nurses tried to sort of force it, because sometimes like if you push it a little harder it will go. But all it did was hurt me again. In addition to that, they were so finicky that sometimes they would flush smoothly, but then by the time that they got around to actually running fluid through it, it would be clogged again, and that would sting like absolute hell. If I can find them, I'll put a few pictures here of my arm after the incident with the ward nurses. The second thing that causes me a lot of anxiety is lack of communication. Being told what steps will be taken, like where the nurses are taking me, what they'll be doing next, how long something will take, is a big factor in my anxiety not getting ahead of me. During the incident with the ward nurses, they barely communicated with me at all, and every time I would like ask a question like should it be hurting, something like that, they just weren't responding to me or anything. Recently, when I got the tubes put in my ears, the nurse talked me through every single step until I went to sleep under the anesthesia, and that really helped me keep my anxiety in check. Third, waiting for long periods of time without having any sense of when the waiting period will end. I like having time frames for things, and when I don't, I get really restless because I don't know how to dole out the activities that I brought with me. During one of my visits to the hospital during December, we were waiting for the results on something, and I ended up just having a breakdown just because we were waiting there so long and we kept being told that the results would come soon, and evidently they were not coming soon because we were there for almost 3 hours just for this one specific thing. But I didn't know how long we would have been there, so I didn't have any like mental preparation for, you know, waiting in one place that long. Fourth, unexpected pain or the prospect of unexpected pain gives me a lot of anxiety now. So much to the point where if I'm cooking or baking or working with something hot, my hands start shaking because of anxiety tremors. I didn't have this problem before I was in the hospital, so I assume that it comes from all the incidents in the hospital where something wasn't supposed to hurt and then it did. I came away from the hospital with a handful of traumatic experiences that I'm still working through. So I think I'll save that for another video since they kind of require a bit more explanation. I can't pronounce that word correctly, I don't know why. For now though, I'm going to talk about some of the coping mechanisms that I used to help me get through some of this anxiety. And maybe they'll help some of you too. So the first thing that I do is count, actually, which is ironic because I am terrible at counting. I'll count my breaths, the seconds, my fingers, anything that forces my brain to focus on the pattern of the numbers rather than the sensory input that I'm getting. This also helps if I find that I'm trying to process too many things at once, or if my brain is creating scary scenarios that are freaking me out. Second is deep breathing. I use a specific pace of breathing to go to sleep at night, to help me put myself to sleep, and I use the same pace to try to calm myself down when my anxiety is flaring up. I find it works best if I do it through the nose, however sometimes I don't get enough oxygen that way because my lungs are crap. I gradually deepen my breathing over a matter of seconds or a few minutes, and I find by the time that I'm at a specific pace, my thoughts have realigned to something more manageable. The third thing I do is kind of weird. I have this song that I listen to at night to go to sleep. Are you noticing a pattern here? And whenever my anxiety is flaring up, I'll play that song in my head, and I find that that helps to calm me down as well. I actually used that after my surgery to help calm me down from all the sounds I was suddenly able to hear, because the recovery room is very loud for some reason. Here's a sample of the music in case you were wondering. The fourth thing I do is a few calming stims, like rubbing my fingers and palms, tapping my fingers against my thigh in a specific pattern, or gently running my nails along the back of my hand. This helps me focus my attention on the feeling of my own hands or the movement of them rather than what's going on. I have to be careful with the nails though, because sometimes it does turn into a nervous itching. The fifth thing I do is a sort of thought redirection. You'll probably have noticed by now most of these are mechanisms that I use to distract myself from what's going on. If it works, it works. What I'll do sometimes, but not quite as often as the rest, since you kind of have to put more focus into it, is imagine either a protective bubble around me, or imagine an entirely different scenario than the one that's going on. As I said, this requires a bit more concentration, so I don't really do it if my anxiety is overwhelming. More like if it's just tapering off and I need something to think about. The last thing I do is probably the most simple, but basically I just don't look at anything they're doing. I find if I even glance over, it just makes my anxiety go nuts, so I try to avoid it as much as possible. I also can't talk when something that's going to hurt me is going on, like if they're putting an IV in or something. Like I become nonverbal for a few seconds, so I kind of have to warn them about that beforehand. So yeah, those are my anxieties about the hospital and what I do to try to negotiate them. I hope some of the coping mechanisms will help you guys work through some of your anxiety that you might have about hospitals or anywhere else as well. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye. I forgot to say this was another mental my mental anesthetic. Oh well.